Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Picture this: Uruguay, 1930, the very first World Cup. Players sprinting across the pitch in heavy leather boots, surrounded by crude wooden stands that looked more like a local fairground than a global sporting arena. Only a few tens of thousands of spectators showed up. Back then, it felt less like a world event and more like a neighborhood carnival somewhere in South America. At the time, the World Cup trophy was nothing more than a symbol of honor. Fast forward to today, and it has evolved into a global entertainment empire capable of emotionally connecting more than 5 billion people. Every 4 years, the attention of the entire planet gets pulled toward one single moment. At that point, football stops being just a game of 22 players chasing a ball. It becomes a worldwide battle over attention, influence, and the power to price global assets. So why should we talk about the World Cup through the lens of economics? Because in the eyes of capital, the World Cup is the perfect safe haven for attention. Whenever the global economy becomes unstable, inflation surges, markets shake, consumers pull back, investors usually become cautious. But when it comes to the World Cup, they suddenly start betting big again. The logic is simple. When people feel anxious, uncertain, or emotionally drained, they become far more willing to pay for moments of excitement, unity, and escape. So today, let's break this entire machine down piece by piece. Part 1. Why countries fight to host the World Cup. A lot of people ask me, hosting a World Cup costs tens, sometimes hundreds, of billions of dollars. Isn't that a terrible business deal? From a traditional accounting perspective, almost every host nation loses money. But if you zoom out and look at the next 20 years instead of the next 2, you realize it's actually an extremely expensive ticket into the world's elite club. This is what economists call the soft power premium. Take Qatar in 2022, for example. They spent more than $220 billion. That number sounds absolutely insane, right? It was roughly equal to the combined spending of multiple previous World Cups over decades. But was Qatar stupid? Not at all. They used the World Cup as a giant excuse to accelerate national modernization. By building Lusail City, expanding airports, and constructing an entirely new metro network, Qatar upgraded its infrastructure at lightning speed. This infrastructure acceleration strategy transforms hosting rights into long-term foreign direct investment. For a country desperate to move beyond oil dependency, the World Cup became the ultimate commercial saying. We're not just an oil nation anymore. We're a global tourism and financial hub. But hidden inside all of this is a famous economic trap known as the white elephant effect. A white elephant refers to massive, expensive infrastructure projects that become nearly useless after the event ends. Look at Brazil after 2014. Some of those multi-hundred-million-dollar stadiums are now little more than abandoned parking lots covered in weeds. Once the economic multiplier effect bubble bursts, local taxpayers are often left paying off the debt for decades. That's exactly why the 2026 World Cup in North America is taking a completely different approach: risk diversification. By co-hosting across 3 nations and using existing NFL stadiums, the World Cup is moving away from massive construction projects and entering a new era built around maximizing existing assets. Part 2. How FIFA makes its money. One thing you need to understand. In this entire it operates on a classic asset-light business model. FIFA doesn't own stadiums, doesn't pay players' salaries, doesn't clean the streets, and as a non-profit organization, often avoids massive tax burdens. Its core business is built on just 3 things: broadcasting rights, sponsorship rights, and ticketing rights. And those revenue streams are unbelievably stable. Its media rights business is highly anti-cyclical. During the 2022 cycle, broadcasting rights accounted for roughly 61% of FIFA's total revenue. Even in the middle of the global streaming wars, whether it's Netflix, Apple TV, or Beyond broadcasting rights, FIFA's other gigantic money-printing machine is its global sponsorship system. FIFA has turned sponsorship into a perfectly engineered class system, from elite FIFA partners to World Cup sponsors, all the way down to regional supporters. Every layer comes with a different price tag and a different level of global influence. So who's actually paying for this global carnival? During the Qatar World Cup cycle, sponsorship revenue generated roughly $1.745 billion for FIFA. And, understand this, companies aren't just buying ad space. They're buying the exclusive legal right to associate themselves with the biggest sporting event on Earth. Top-tier FIFA partners, brands like Adidas, Coca-Cola, and Wanda Group, are estimated to pay somewhere between $70 million and $100 million annually. What they're really purchasing is long-term global exposure across the entire FIFA ecosystem. Then you have World Cup sponsors, companies like Budweiser, Hisense, and Mengniu. These companies usually spend between $20 million and $50 million for a single tournament cycle. Even though Budweiser got hit with Qatar's sudden alcohol restrictions, their previously signed $75 million deal still guaranteed massive global visibility throughout the tournament. So why are corporations willing to burn hundreds of millions on this? Because the World Cup is one of the few events powerful enough to break through the modern algorithmic bubble. Whether you're in New York, Tokyo, London, or Mumbai, during the World Cup, the entire planet is watching the same thing at the same time. Take Hisense as an example. After continuously sponsoring major football tournaments starting in 2016, its global brand recognition jumped from around 30% to over 50% within 5 years. Its overseas revenue eventually grew to more than half of the company's total sales. The coldest part of FIFA's business model is this. FIFA doesn't actually produce anything. It simply packages humanity's collective attention, slices it into commercial inventory, and sells it at premium prices to multinational corporations hungry for global expansion. At its core, this is a global attention tax. Every sponsored drink you buy is indirectly feeding FIFA's multi-billion-dollar balance sheet. This near-zero-cost business structure has turned FIFA into one of the most powerful attention brokers on Earth. Part 3. Footballers have become financial assets. Modern financial derivatives in motion. So how valuable is a single World Cup goal? For a young striker from Africa or the Balkans, this is the leverage effect of live assets. The World Cup is essentially the largest player valuation marketplace in the world. Elite clubs, super agents, and sovereign wealth-backed investment groups are all making calculations in real time. Take Kylian Mbappé as an example. He's not just an incredibly fast winger. He himself is a multidimensional intellectual property asset. His valuation is tied to Nike's global market share, EA Sports branding power, and even France's international cultural image. And Lionel Messi's move to Inter Miami wasn't just a transfer. It looked more like a multinational capital restructuring deal. The contract reportedly included Apple TV subscription revenue sharing, Adidas merchandise profits, and even future MLS-related equity incentives. This is what happens when elite athletes use World Cup exposure to globally restructure and optimize their personal brand assets. Football is no longer just a sport. It's starting to resemble Wall Street. Part 4. How ordinary people can make money from the World Cup. So here comes the real question. Can ordinary people like us actually profit from the World Cup economy? The answer is yes. But only if you think globally instead of locally. The first opportunity is digital content arbitrage. The internet economy today works on a very simple formula. Technology gets built in Silicon Valley. Content gets produced cheaply elsewhere, and distribution happens worldwide. And what makes the World Cup special? It's a universal language. Even if you don't speak English or Spanish, you still understand the emotional explosion of a last-minute winning goal, which means if you know how to create content, you can profit from what I call the attention exchange rate. For example, producing videos in low-cost regions, then distributing them through TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels to audiences in high CPM countries. A viral goal compilation, an emotional commentary clip, or even a fan reaction video can generate millions of views within a single day. And now, AI translation tools have almost completely erased the language barrier. The second opportunity is what many people jokingly call the Yiwu Index. Never underestimate football jerseys, cheering flags, plastic horns, and cheap souvenirs. The World Cup triggers a worldwide spending frenzy. Massive manufacturing hubs like Yiwu in China can often detect global demand shifts 6 months before the tournament even begins. Sometimes, you don't even need to understand football. You just need to understand supply chains. If a certain country suddenly starts mass ordering jerseys for a national team, it usually means consumer excitement is already heating up. That's the real economic heartbeat behind the World Cup. But behind every global celebration, there's always danger. And as a creator, I need to warn you about this. The gambling industry is probably the most ruthless mathematical harvesting machine during the World Cup. They operate with elite-level statisticians, predictive models, and probability experts. Betting companies don't gamble. They simply collect guaranteed profits through spreads and betting margins. The biggest illusion ordinary people have is believing they can beat probability. Most so-called inside information is nothing more than bait covered in blood. And beyond gambling, there's another major threat: financial scams. Every tournament cycle brings a flood of fan tokens, World Cup investment projects, and sports-related NFT schemes. These projects exploit fan emotion to pump prices rapidly. Then the founders disappear overnight with the money. In the crypto world, there's a famous term for this: a rug pull. And what's left behind are collapsing prices and ordinary investors holding worthless assets. The World Cup isn't just a festival of wealth, it's also a global stress test of human greed and emotion. Part 5, 2026, North America, the new rules of football economics. Now let's shift our attention to 2026. Because once the World Cup arrives in North America, arguably the most commercially optimized sports market on Earth, the rules of the game will completely change. For the first time in history, the World Cup will expand to 48 teams. The number of matches will jump from 64 to 104. So what does that mean mathematically? It means more tickets, more advertising inventory, more broadcast hours, and more global attention. Ticket revenue alone is projected to surpass $1 billion. And those additional 40 matches could generate another 2 to 3 billion. I believe 2026 could become the breakout year for Web3-powered sports experiences and metaverse viewing. In the future, you may not simply buy a ticket. Instead, you could be purchasing a digital pass bundled with NFTs, augmented reality experiences, and exclusive virtual identity access. And things get even crazier with sports data monetization. Every sprint, every pass, every shot could become real-time monetized data. We may eventually see live bidding markets for player performance data itself. Imagine this. The World Cup final takes place at MetLife Stadium near New York. In reality, the stadium only holds around 80,000 people. But with VR technology, organizers could theoretically sell 10 million virtual VIP seats worldwide. That kind of near-zero-cost digital distribution could completely eliminate the revenue ceiling of live sports. And the three-country hosting model in 2026 is essentially a financial strategy built around portfolio diversification. In the past, most World Cups were hosted by a single nation. The problem is that if the host country experienced currency crashes, political instability, or economic turbulence, the commercial value of the tournament could suffer massively. Take Brazil in 2014, for example. At the time, the Brazilian real experienced major volatility while the country faced mounting fiscal pressure. For FIFA, that kind of concentration risk is extremely dangerous. The United States-Canada-Mexico model is completely different. It combines the stability of the US dollar system, Canada's multicultural consumer base, and Mexico's deeply passionate football culture. This decentralized hosting structure not only spreads infrastructure costs, but also minimizes systemic risk in an increasingly unstable geopolitical environment. More importantly, the US and Canada already possess world-class sports infrastructure. They don't need to build massive white elephant stadium projects like many previous host nations did, which means the 2026 tournament could potentially become one of the highest return World Cups in history. According to projections from Boston Consulting Group, the 2026 World Cup could generate roughly $5 billion in short-term economic activity across North America. It's also expected to create more than 40,000 temporary jobs. But the real story is the long-term impact, because this tournament could permanently transform football's position within North America. For decades, soccer in America was treated as a secondary sport. The real kings were the NFL, NBA, and MLB, but now everything is changing. As demographics shift, Latino audiences grow, and European football culture keeps flooding into North America, American capital is finally realizing something important. Soccer may become the next multi-hundred-billion-dollar sports market. So when you step back and really look at it, the World Cup has never been just about football. It's a massive commercial ecosystem built from global capital, national branding, media attention, consumer psychology, and technological evolution. On the surface, you see players running across the pitch. But outside the stadium, what's really moving at full speed is capital itself. And the 2026 North American World Cup could push that commercialization further than ever before. So where will the biggest opportunities emerge? Will it be inside VR-powered viewing experiences, inside sports data monetization, or in traditional infrastructure and real-world consumer spending? Personally, I think the game is only beginning. And before we end this video, I want to leave you with one final question. In your opinion, where will the biggest wealth opportunity of the 2026 World Cup come from? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And together, let's decode the real economics shaping this era.